What if your neighbor said your whole existence depends on them? That's the claim out of Washington, rattling Ottawa this morning, and it lands right as we head into a week of tough trade talks, shifting politics next door in Quebec, and a big question for the senator's blue line. Here's what's new today in the capital and across Canada. First, the tense Canada-US headline. President Donald Trump said Canada owes its continued existence to American support, taking a shot at Prime Minister Mark Carney, after Carney warned that geography and old alliances no longer guarantee our prosperity or security. Trump floated a Golden Dome missile defense concept he says would also shield Canada, and pressed for more gratitude from Ottawa. The timing matters. Canada is preparing a cabinet huddle on the economy and trade, as a mandated review of the CUSMA deal looms. Translation for workers and businesses here. The agenda will be about shoring up supply chains, clarifying the rules of the game with the U.S., and making sure any new security architecture doesn't come with strings that undercut Canadian interests. That cross-border tension is also shaping migration pressures. With the U.S. tightening immigration, community groups report a surge in people, from longtime U.S. residents in states like Minnesota to Venezuelans on expiring temporary protections, asking how to move north. The Canadian Council for Refugees warns that humanitarian conditions for migrants in the U.S. are deteriorating, with heightened risk of apprehension and deportation. Canada's welcoming reputation is drawing attention, but advocates caution. Complacency is risky. Political pressure that narrows protections in one country can echo in another if we're not careful about the policies and the tone we set. Economically, farmers are watching a different cross-Pacific negotiation with real dollars at stake. Ottawa has extended tariff remissions on some Chinese steel and aluminum until 2026 because certain inputs aren't made here, while still calling out China's subsidies as unfair. The collateral damage is on the farm. Canola growers got partial relief, tariffs eased on seed and meal, but canola oil remains hit with a 100% tariff, and an interim deal only runs through year-end. Producers want clarity and a permanent fix so they can plan crush capacity, contracts, and shipping schedules. In a year of price volatility and climate-driven yield swings, uncertainty is its own cost. Across the river, Quebec politics just took a sharp turn. François Legault is stepping down as premier and CAQ leader, acknowledging a public appetite for change after support for the party slid to about 10% in a recent poll. Critics say a focus on identity issues crowded out bread-and-butter economic and social concerns. Still, 4 CAQ representatives in the Ottawa plan to run again, and there's strong interest from multiple parties in the region as the Liberals also refresh their leadership. Federally, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre won't be on the ballot in Battle River Crowfoot, a move that frees up the party's tactical options elsewhere. For Ottawa-Gatineau voters, expect more candidate visits and a lot of courting on affordability, housing, and the healthcare workforce, issues that cut directly across the interprovincial commute in this region. On the ice, the Belleville Senators have quietly built momentum, 5 straight positive results, matching their season-high point streak, as they open a pivotal 7-game road swing. Ridley Greig has been cooking in a top 6 role, 6 points in his last 4. And that's keeping the Calder Cup dream alive. Up in Ottawa, one big question is whether help could come via trade. Multiple insiders say Vancouver's Philip Hronek profiles as a near-perfect fit on the right side of the Senators' defense. The Canucks are listening on offers, though it would take a real package to pry him loose. Meanwhile, TSN's Cameron Gauntz didn't mince words on the Sens penalty kill. Too often, the 4 on the ice aren't seeing the same picture at the same time. That's fixable. Structure, reps, and roles. But it requires buy-in fast if Ottawa wants to tilt tight games back in their favor. Internationally, Mexico transferred 37 cartel members to the U.S. at the Justice Department's request. President Claudia Sheinbaum framed it as a sovereign decision in Mexico's national interest, even as critics argue U.S. pressure, including Trump's threats of military action against cartels, set the stage. Observers see the move as a pressure release valve to show action on crime, especially with regional tensions up after a U.S. military operation in Venezuela targeting Nicolás Maduro. The through line for Canada: regional security choices often spill into our own migration, trade, and policing files. In Europe, leaders are still calibrating how to work with a volatile White House. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer tried a respectful reset after the Greenland flap, only to be blasted by Trump over the UK's decision to return Diego Garcia to Mauritius, despite previous US officials praising the move. Separate reporting highlights a blunter playbook. Countries that financially benefited Trump family interests tended to get better outcomes. Examples cited include overt gift-giving, like a Nobel Peace Prize offer from Venezuelan politician Maria Corina Machado, and deals tied to crypto or stablecoins with family connections, including investments linked to the UAE that were followed by policy shifts. However you feel about those claims, the lesson for Ottawa is consistent. Keep dealings transparent, protect institutions from undue influence, and be ready to communicate clearly with Canadians about why we say yes or no in any deal. Quick check on the weather before we go. Ottawa is looking at a high near -1 degrees Celsius and a low around -19 degrees Celsius with light snow at times. If you're traveling to Toronto, they've dug out from close to 10 centimeters and are bracing for a deep freeze by the weekend, with overnight lows potentially near -22 degrees Celsius. 2 quick takeaways on AI and the climate angle we follow here. Climate and conflict are already reshaping migration routes. Expect more people to test Canada's systems as extreme weather and policy moves collide. AI tools are increasingly used to forecast flows and manage caseloads. Useful, but they need oversight to avoid bias and protect rights. For agriculture, trade friction lands on top of climate stress. Smarter data on soil moisture, yields, and shipping can help farmers manage risk, while Ottawa works the tariff file. But no algorithm can replace clear, stable policy. Before we wrap, what to watch? Ottawa's cabinet meeting on trade and growth as CUSMA's review clock ticks. Any movement on an NHL trade front for the Senators' defense. Quebec riding-level maneuvers in the Ottawa as parties test new messages. Whether the canola oil tariff sees faster relief or stays a sticking point into spring planting. That's it for today's roundup from Ottawa. Local stories with national stakes and an eye on the ice. If you've got thoughts on who the Sens should target on the back end, send them in. Thanks for listening.